Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Monday, February 24th, 2025 land use hearing. As is our tradition, we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'll ask you to join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I call this meeting to order and want to welcome everyone for being here. I'm Kristen Stevens, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. With me is my fellow Commissioner, Commissioner John Kafalis, and Commissioner Shattuck McNally will not be joining us this afternoon, so it'll just be the two of us. Behind me, from the clerk's office, we have Deirdre O'Neill helping us. We have from the County Attorney's Office, Christine Lucassen. And a variety of other folks from county departments, as you see a lot of people with placards and microphones in front of them. I will turn this over to Jenny Axmaker, our lead planner, and she will be introducing everyone and sort of explaining how this meeting will be run this afternoon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joining me at the dais, we have Justin Curry, one of the county planners, as well as Principal Planner Casti Fior. I'm joined by our planning CERT administrative staff, Ryan Oswandel. And then across the way, we have Senior Planner Samantha Mott, Planner Jared C., Ashton Brodall from the county's health department, as well as Leah Schneider, also from the health department. And then unfortunately, without a placard, we have Casey Cisneros from the Weed District. So with that, we respectfully request that all members of the audience silence their electronic devices. Please help yourself to a copy of the agenda and the hearing room procedures, which are located on the wall just next to the door, or if you're joining us online, you can find them at larimer.org/BOCC/commissioners-meeting. Please wait to speak until you are recognized by the chair. Please maintain civility, refraining from audience applause, comments, or disruptions, whether positive or negative. Please make all comments to the Board of County Commissioners from the podium. We do have a portable microphone if needed. The microphone on the podium does adjust, so please feel free to move it so that we can all hear you well. Please state your name at the beginning of your comments and provide the spelling of your name if it's unique. Please speak directly and loudly into the microphone so remote participants may hear. We do, upon request, have assisted listening devices available for the hearing impaired. For those on Zoom, attendees will be muted until you're recognized by the chair. If an online attendee wishes to speak or to request that a consent item be removed, please use the raise your hand function on the Zoom control bar or *9 on your phone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to move on to discussing the agenda that we have here in front of us this afternoon. I'll give a little information about those items and kind of explain how we'll go through the agenda this afternoon. The first item is a tabled item. It will be tabled to an unknown date, and that is the Ridge at Legacy Farms appeal, file number 25 GNRL 0563. We do not know what date that will be tabled to, and so if you're interested in that item, you might want to contact our planning department. We have a tabled discussion item we'll be discussing this afternoon. That's an item that was tabled on January 27th, 2025. That's the Askland Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Appeal, file number 24, Zone 3601, and that's an appeal to a section of the Larimer County Land Use Code to deviate from the requirement of the installation of electric vehicle parking spaces and associated charging infrastructure. We have some items on our, then we have 3 items on our public consent agenda. The first one is the Peterson Accessory Living Area Appeal, 24 Zone 3622. This is an appeal to Article 345A of the Larimer County Land Use Code to allow an attached accessory living area to have its entrance located on the same facade as the main dwelling. The second item on the consent agenda is the Stark Fourth Appeal, file number 24 GNRL 0562. That is an appeal to Article 6.5.5.C.8A of the Larimer County Land Use Code for an extension to the final plat submittal requirement of 1 year from the preliminary plat approval. And the third and final item on the consent agenda is the Griffin Lot Consolidation and Easement Vacation, file number 24, Land 4456. This is a request to consolidate lots 30 and 31 in the Crystal Lakes 13th filing PUD and to vacate the 20-foot wide utility easement along the common lot line. And then we have two public hearing discussion items. Adding, the first one is to add meadow hawkweed. I don't think I need to pronounce the Latin name. But there is a Latin name for that, and I assure you it's not easily pronounceable. And we would be adding that to the Larimer County noxious weed list. I'm going to let Casey Cisneros take a stab at that later on. And our second public hearing discussion item is the Ehrlich Appeal, file number 24, GNRL 0561. This is an appeal to Section 3.3.3 G3 of the Land Use Code to store commercial fireworks in a storage building on a vacant lot. So I will take the chair's prerogative. Thank you. Couldn't come up with that word for a second. Take the chair's prerogative and say that we will discuss the consent agenda, or we will deal with the consent agenda items first, and then we will move on to the first tabled item, which is the vehicle charging infrastructure appeal. Because the consent agenda should go quickly. Typically, items on the consent agenda are considered routine in nature, and as far as we know, have no perceived or significant controversy. And so there'll be no presentation from staff on these items, and the applicant won't need to make a case for that unless one of those items is removed from the consent agenda. So, Commissioner, do you wish to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I do not.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to pull something from the consent agenda? Is there anyone online who would like to pull something from the consent agenda?
If there is anyone online who would like to pull any of these items from the consent agenda, please use the raised hand function. There are no hands raised.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will ask Commissioner Kafalis to make a motion on the consent agenda.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all and welcome. I move to approve the three items on the February 24th, 2025 consent agenda, subject to the conditions of in the staff reports, and further move to authorize the chair to sign the findings and resolutions.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 2-0. And so anyone who was here for the consent agenda, those items were approved. And phew, you're done and you can leave if you'd like to. You're welcome to stay as well. So we'll now move on to the public hearing discussion items. And the first item that will be brought forward is a table discussion item from January 27th, 2025, which I said is the Askland Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Appeal. So I will ask Jenny, because I'm unsure. We had a partial hearing on this and had tabled the item. So can you explain to us where we're at in that procedure and how we need to proceed?
Yes, Madam Chair, you did close the public hearing in the initial hearing of this application. So you would have to reopen the public hearing should you wish to take additional testimony, though that is not required. You have entered into deliberations. However, some new information has been provided to us, so staff was going to give a short overview just to update you on where we are with this case.
Commissioner Kafalis, do you have any thoughts about reopening public comment?
The only thought I have, Madam Chair, is to maybe do a quick check to see if anybody actually showed up to offer public comment, and if that is the case, perhaps we should accommodate them.
And Jenny, would that be appropriate to do that before the staff does a presentation to update us?
It's your choice.
Okay. Well, I'll just ask, is there anybody in the audience who would like to give public comment on this item? We would open it up if there was someone who wanted to. I don't see any hands raised. Is there anyone online who would like to give public comment on this item?
Is there anyone, if you are interested in making public comment on this case, please use the raise hand function now. There are no hands raised.
Perfect, thank you. Well, then we will close public comment officially for the second time, and we will move on to sort of some staff information about some updates about this item.
And just, pardon me, Madam Chair, I believe
Yes.
the applicant is also here and may want to make some additional remarks.
Okay, we'll do the staff and then we'll go to, and how would we typically do that with some additional remarks? Would we give them 10 minutes to do that like we have in the past, or what's the procedure?
We don't have a firm procedure. We certainly can do 10 minutes as our standard practice.
Okay.
If you'd like to make that shorter, you could also make that decision.
Okay. Well, we'll go 10 minutes just to, because there is additional information coming forward, and maybe it'll be shorter than 10 minutes, and that will also be good. All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. And yes, as Ginny mentioned, I do have some updates based on the last hearing we had on January 27th. So a quick little background. This is the location of the parcel. It is this blue highlighted, triangle-shaped parcel. It's just off of County Road 38E in the Horsetooth Reservoir area, and it's directly north of the Blue Sky Trailhead parking lot. So the applicant, they submitted an administrative special review application that involves a change of use of a vacant building to a microbrewery and a tasting room with the addition of an outdoor patio. Through that review process, triggered some compliance with certain requirements of the land use code, including but not limited to the county's electric vehicle infrastructure or electric vehicle charging infrastructure requirements. Those number of EV spaces required is based on a percentage of the total parking provided. In this case, there was some confusion with the previous hearing about the minimum parking required per code, what the applicant was proposing, and which number is what we were discussing as what is required versus what they're proposing. So the applicant got back, went and did their calculations. It came up that they're going to propose 44 parking spaces, which is more than the required spaces, which per our code is 22, so it'll be essentially double the amount of parking. So based on the parking they're proposing, the percentage for EV capable and ready is 10% of the total parking, and so that would be 4 spaces each. And then the percentage is for 5% of the total parking is for the EV installed, and so in this case it'd be 2 spaces is what is required. The applicant, they are appealing those numbers, and they are proposing to provide 1 EV installed space and 4 EV capable spaces, and then none of the ready. And then with that updated information, the development service team previously had a recommendation of denying the appeal due to the fact that their original application had them installing 0 spaces installed, ready, or capable. With this unique appeal, and one that hasn't been appealed yet before or been brought up to the commissioners, the development service team has changed from a denial to a no recommendation on the appeal. And we'll and if you have any questions for the commissioners, I'd be happy to answer those for you. And as Jenny mentioned, the applicant is here as well if you have questions for them.
Thank you, Justin. Any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Justin. The question that I have for you is, when the formula that we came up with in the land use code regarding the relationship between the number of EV-related spaces and overall parking spaces, was there any consideration given to the additional parking spaces that may be requested are due to seasonality? In other words, as I read the application, the additional spaces are to accommodate summertime when it's probably going to be used more. So did our formula take into consideration that possible variation?
Not that I'm aware of. For sure, I was not here when those standards were brought, and I don't believe that was a consideration, since there's not necessarily a specific seasonality of parking within the land use code, and so that's something that's a unique situation. It probably varies from project to project.
Thank you. That's all.
I don't have any questions at this time, so I think we'll let the applicant come up. John or Rachel, if you want to come up, you would have 10 minutes. to speak.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name's John Asklin. I believe Mr. Curry did a good presentation, and I did do a presentation at the last hearing. So I don't have a lot to add at this point, but I am, available here for questions if you have any.
Do you have any questions, Commissioner? Go ahead, please.
Sure, I don't want to let John off too easy. I'm wondering, sir, if you could. I know a big part of the discussion when we first convened on January 27th was around the current capacity of the retired water treatment plant, and it sounds like you've made a determination that the capacity would accommodate one EV charger actually installed, as well as I think four EV capable. Can you speak to how you came to that determination, sir?
Yes, Commissioner. Currently, the capacity will allow us to do one installed, so there would be one space designated for EV charging. I'd spoken with a few electrical engineers trying to decide what capacity we have there right now and to what we need to do to upgrade to do a full compliance. And to do a full compliance, we're looking at probably in excess of $50,000 because the transformers at the site aren't large enough to put in the full requirement at this time. So we'd be looking at a pretty big dollar cost up front, and plus speaking to Poudre Valley RA, they said it might take up to 18 months to get a transformer if they don't have the right one in stock.
May I do one more follow-up, please?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Let me think. So, how much thought have you given to, you would have 4 parking spaces that could potentially be adapted to actually install eventually EV chargers? I mean, have you guys given much thought to how would you determine whether that additional capacity is needed? Based on visitors coming to your place and people in electric vehicles and all of that. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I have thought about monitoring the utilization of putting in one EV charging station and monitor the utilization. And I think there will become a point when it gets maybe say above 50% utilization. It's time to start looking at activating the next one, and then maybe the next one, just kind of take it more of an incremental approach to it instead of going full 100% active initially.
Great. I believe that's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any questions at this time, but I thank you for explaining. All right, Commissioner, any further questions of staff that you have?
No, I do not.
I guess, Justin, one thing that I would ask is, so, we have the criteria in front of us. We're definitely deviating from the standards in the land use code, and yet staff no longer has at least a recommending a denial. So can you just speak to that a little bit about why that might have changed your position? Because they're, with regard to the criteria, I mean, do you feel like that this meets some of the intent of what we wanted, when we created those, the code for that? I mean, is there?
Yeah, so we don't have a precedent on what we've previously approved as far as a deviation to this request. I think given the unique location for this particular business and the conversion from a former water treatment plant, by now providing at least one space, it seems like a reasonable amount to staff. But like I said, we've never considered one of these before. We thought 0 was not enough. And so now that we have firmer parking numbers, 50% seems like a good compliance rate, but wasn't enough for us to feel confident that we should be recommending approval.
And thank you. And I didn't want to press you too much on that. I just wanted to, kind of hear your thought process as we sort of try to figure this out ourselves. It's helpful to kind of think, what you were thinking from. I certainly, thank the applicant for coming forward. And it got a little confusing last time for folks who weren't here that because of, the requirements, for the installation, it seemed like we just weren't sure it was possible at all with the existing electrical, infrastructure that you had, and looks like it is at least for this. So, I appreciate you coming forward with a compromise to work with what the like I said, the infrastructure that you do have in place at this point. So, Commissioner, any other questions before we deliberate? Okay. Well, I will, since there's only two of us, you get to go first in deliberation, and I will leave it to you.
Oh, gee, Madam Chair, thanks. So appreciate that. Appreciate that the applicants have gone back and done some further analysis and looked at electrical capacity issues. So I think that's a big plus, and been willing to quote compromise to look at installing some of the EV charging capacity, as we've discussed. Ultimately, we have to base our decision on the 5 review criteria regarding this appeal to this particular aspect of the land use code. And I think in reviewing the document, there was no issues with criteria C and D. There were with some of the others, but I think based on the current scenario and also considering the additional parking spaces based on seasonal use, and also because my read of the comprehensive plan and the land use code, and this was stated in one of the other items tonight, there is some degree of flexibility in terms of interpreting the intent of the land use code. So, with that in mind, I believe these criteria have been met, and therefore I can support this current application, this appeal.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll also support the appeal. I appreciate, as I said, the applicant coming forward with a sort of compromise space in which we will have some EV capable and one EV charger that will be installed right away. I don't think that subverts the purpose of the code. I think that our intention was to create more electrical vehicle infrastructure in our community, and this does that and allows for that incremental movement towards that, which you explained, Mr. Askelon. So I will be supporting it. I feel that it does meet the criteria that is before us. And I don't believe it will result in any increased cost to the general public or any and I think it is consistent with the purpose of the code, which was to create more electrical vehicle infrastructure in our community. So, that being said, I will ask Commissioner Kofalas to make a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I offer the motion, there are no conditions of approval, and usually we have conditions of approval, at least the basic ones. Can you folks help us with that, or shall we just do a motion without any conditions of approval? We want to make sure you earn your pay today, Justin. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, there are no additional conditions of approval. The applicant is currently in a separate review process for the brewery, and also they're proposing a patio. So all that, their compliance or any possible conditions may be added there. But at this point, they're, like I said, in the review process for those proposed use.
Great. Thank you very much. And then with that in mind, I offer the following. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the Askland Electrical Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Appeal, file number 24-Zone 3601.
Thank you for the motion. Any further discussion on this item, Commissioner?
I do not.
Okay,
have any
I do not
comments.
either. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 2-0. Thank you. All right. Our next item. Sorry.
And thank you for talking into the mic, applicant.
So our next item is Casey Cisneros, and it's adding the meadow hawkweed to Larimer County noxious weed list. I don't know, Casey, do you have a little presentation, or do you want to tee this up for us and then tell us how to pronounce the Latin name of this weed?
Yeah, I'm here to talk about Hieracium cespitosum, or meadow hawkweed, and how we would like to make a recommendation to add it to our county noxious weed list. I do have a presentation, which you have seen at the work session that I was at on January 13th, seeking concurrence to hold this hearing. So just give me a moment to pull this up. I'm gonna need help. I don't see the share. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, now just a little bit of background of how we've gotten to here so far. This is a plant that we'd like to consider being put on the Colorado, or on the county's noxious weed list. We did discuss this with the Land Stewardship Advisory Board, also known as the County Noxious Weed Advisory Board, 2 times in 2024, and then we brought it to that work session on June 13th. And per some direction that we got at that work session, we did print a notice in the newspaper. We posted on our social media outlets to inform the public of the hearing. And we also posted information about the hearing on the Larimer County Weed District website. So just for some backup information, a noxious weed is a legal designation making management of a plant required. These plants are invasive, exotic species that reduce the biodiversity, degrade habitat, and alter ecosystem processes, such as carbon sequestration. And it is the duty of the local government to ensure that land managers control noxious weeds. So the noxious weed in question here today, or the potential noxious weed, is meadow hawkweed. It's currently on the state watch list, meaning that it's not officially a noxious weed in the state of Colorado, but they're considering making it a noxious weed in the future. Its cousin, orange hawkweed, is a List A species. That's the highest priority noxious weed in Colorado. And it is found on 41 parcels of land within Larimer County. Currently, we only have 4 parcels in all of Larimer County that has meadow hawkweed present, and this is along Highway 7 and the Boulder County line. It is a highly invasive perennial species. It threatens the biodiversity of that locale, and our staff, in coordination with Colorado Department of Agriculture's weed management program, are working towards eradication with the private landowners who have the meadow hawkweed present on their lands. And the Land Stewardship Advisory Board recommends that the Board of County Commissioners add meadow hawkweed to the county noxious weed list. So this is a graph I like to show to illustrate the importance of early detection and rapid response. As you can see, as a noxious weed is present on the landscape, the longer it's on the landscape, the more costly it becomes, and the area that's infested grows somewhat exponentially. Currently, we're at the very bottom of this curve in the eradication zone, where the some very few resources will be necessary to completely eliminate this plant from the county. Here's a photo of what it looks like in Montana, and you can see the invasiveness there. So our recommendation is to add this as a noxious weed with the management goal of eradication. So wherever it's found, it needs to be removed and eradicated. Here are the parcels on which it's found in Larimer County. On my right, where the four-wheeler is, it has been treated by staff, and this has been a free service up till now for these landowners to participate in. And you can see within 1 year, they've gotten really good results. On the left side, you see a lot of little yellow flowers, which are still present. Again, we're seeing really good results in our management. 2023 pre-treatment, there's a big field of yellowish orange flowers, and in 2024 we found very little. Most of it was treated with a backpack sprayer, a spot spray. And as a part of this hearing, we also have to ask for public comment.
Great. Thank you, Casey. Any questions before we start public comment, Commissioner? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Casey. Could you say a little bit more about the treatment? And you mentioned spraying, backpack sprayer. I think it would be helpful for the public to know that when we have a wide array of treatments that we consider when we're looking at invasive species and how we try to, if spraying is involved, the use of an herbicide, how we try to target that spraying to minimize any unintended consequences. Can you please speak to that, sir?
Absolutely, yeah. So we always approach weed management with integrated techniques. We don't rely on one single method for all situations. So we don't necessarily spray herbicides on all these plants. We mow. We also do weed whipping, hand pulling. We use biological controls where they're effective within the county. However, this being a deep-rooted perennial plant, herbicides is going to be the best, most effective and efficient treatment. And I think what we need to keep in mind here is that because it's only found on 4 parcels within Larimer County, that it's going to be a lot less herbicide used to eradicate this plant than if we were to just let it go and then private landowners and managers have to manage it later once it's spread further.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. And regarding how we apply the herbicide, you mentioned that this particular species is, and it would be great to hear you speak the actual botanical name of the genus and species at some point, or state that. But it's deep-rooted, so how are we actually going after the roots, or is it the foliage? Is it this is I do have a little bit of a botany background, so this is specific to dicots and not grasses. And so I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about that and how we're doing our best to prevent any impacts on pollinators and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I'll be done.
So we use a selective broadleaf herbicide, meaning that it selects for certain genuses. It works really well on sunflowers and also legumes. And it's taken in through the leaves of the plants and then translocated through the plant into the roots, killing that root zone, which is the difficult part of controlling perennial weeds. Initially, in areas, I'm going to go back a slide, like on the left in the 2023 pre-treatment area, we did broadcast that area with an ATV sprayer, but you can see the year after that, we've been able to go back to that location and only use spot spraying to treat the remaining plants.
Thank you. Thank you.
And our staff did report that there were other native sunflower species that were growing in this pasture, even after that broadcast spray last year.
Thank you. I think that's good to point out because that's the hope here, right? As you said, is that the native plants can continue to grow and we don't have these. But do they choke them out then? I mean, is it harder than, I guess, for these other native species to grow? And I mean,
Yes, yeah. What will happen is these exotic invasive species, they don't have any natural checks like diseases or insects that necessarily selectively feed on them. So they're able to take up more resources faster and more efficiently than some of these native species that do have pathogens and insects that are eating them. So they're at a bit of it. The native species are at a bit of a disadvantage.
Thank you. Thanks for explaining that. I don't have any further questions, so we'll open to public comment and then we'll. Okay. Thank you, Casey. Thanks for explaining that.
Sure.
We did have a work session on this too, so it's our second time around hearing it. But and Commissioner Cafalis, did you want Casey to pronounce that Latin name one more
Only
time?
if it's in front of me.
I
But
think it's
I'd rather have.
Hieracium cespitosum.
There you go.
Even better the second time.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you. So now we'll open it up to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to give public comment on this item? Seeing none. Can we ask if there's anyone online as well?
If there are any members of the public online who would like to make public comment on this case, please use the raise hand function now. There are no hands raised.
Great. Thank you. Well, Commissioner, I don't know if you want to deliberate at all or you would just like to make the motion, but I would like to get a motion from you on this item.
You officially close public comment?
Oh, I didn't. Let's close public comment. Thank you for the reminder. We'll bring it back to the commissioners. And any words before you deliver a motion?
No, I just appreciate the thoughtfulness, and we look at this very carefully. I know there are a range of opinions about what's the best way to address invasive species, noxious weeds. I do believe that in the upcoming administrative matters meeting, we'll need to approve some type of ordinance, I think.
There's a resolution.
A resolution.
Yes, if you make a motion and pass it today,
It
then
would
that
go.
resolution's on consent agenda for tomorrow.
Yeah, yes. So with that in mind, that's all I have to say. Would you like me to offer the motion?
Yes, please.
Yes. I move to add meadow hawkweed to the Larimer County noxious weed list with the management goal of eradication as allowed by Colorado Revised Statute 35-5.5.
Thank you. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 2-0. Thank you,
Great.
Casey.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we have one more item on our public hearing agenda. As a reminder for items on the discussion agenda, there'll be the presentation from staff, the opportunity for the applicant to make their case, then the opportunity for public comment, and then if there is public comment, the applicant can respond with a rebuttal to that public comment, and then the commissioners can ask questions and we'll enter into deliberations and make a decision on the item. So our next item is the Ehrlich Appeal, file number 24 GNRL 0561. And I imagine there is a staff report on this one, so we'll let you
Yes,
take it over.
Principal Planner Fiore is stepping in for J.C. McNulty today to make the presentation.
Thank you, Planner Fiore.
Thank you. So we are here to speak about the Ehrlich Appeal 24 GNRL 0561. And as Jenny mentioned, JC has prepared the staff report and has been following this file along since application, but unfortunately wasn't able to be here today. So I'm speaking on her behalf. So the subject property is at 2163 B Lake Road in Wellington. It has a lot size of 4.07 acres and access from B Lake Road, which is a local public road. It's located immediately northeast of the intersection of North County Road 11 and East County Road 62. And there's a site plan available on your slides. The applicant and owner are Brian and Mary Ehrlich. They're located at 2151 Bee Lake Road, which is immediately adjacent to this parcel. It's in the O Open Zone District, and it's served primarily by Wellington Fire Protection District, and there are no current other utilities on site, including no water and sewer. Both the existing and proposed use is a pole barn to be used for fireworks storage. So the request is specifically an appeal to subsection 3.3.3 G3 of the Land Use Code to store fireworks for commercial purposes in a storage building on a vacant lot with no primary residence on site. The owner's business, being Bee Lake Productions, provides pyrotechnic or firework displays for the town of Wellington, as well as 1 to 2 other customers each year. This section of the Land Use Code states that no residential, business, or commercial activities are permitted in a storage building or garage unless approved by the county commissioners through the special review or administrative special review processes. If this application was approved, the proposed use, being fireworks storage, on this lot would be classified as a commercial activity within a residential building, similar to that of a home occupation. So here's a site plan with a smaller excerpt, so you could see the details, just showing where that pole barn is located on that lot. So subsection 3.3.3 G3 ensures that storage buildings and garages are used appropriately and align with zoning regulations by restricting residential, business, or commercial activities without county commissioner approval in these structures. These activities would typically require special review or administrative special review approval. In this case, staff, in discussion with the Community Development Director, made the determination that an appeal appears to be a more appropriate process than rezoning the property in combination with a special review or an administrative special review approval, as the proposed use is relatively limited in scope, relatively low impact, time limited, and already regulated under strict federal and state safety standards, including all required permits from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives and the Wellington Fire Protection District. We provided community notice to 18 property owners within 500 feet of the subject property and in surrounding subdivisions. To date, we've received 5 comments in support of the request, with 1 comment submitted in opposition. Those in support noted that the existing licensing is in place. The applicant has experience with fireworks displays and handling. They are compliant with state and federal regulations, the proper design materials, and minimal noise, traffic, or inconvenience on the site. Those opposed noted concerns with the appropriateness of storing fireworks in a residential neighborhood, concerns regarding hazardous materials, and concerns that HOA covenants are being violated by the construction of a storage building. We received various supporting documents, including the appeal request itself, the site plan, the Federal Explosives License and Permit, the Wellington Fire Protection District Permit, Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control Permit, Pyrotechnics Guild International Display Fireworks Operator Certificate, as well as a number of safety standards for storage magazines. All of those are provided in your packet. So what did we hear from our referral agencies? The Larimer County Building Division noted that if the appeal is approved and planning either requires no further action or requires the applicant to obtain a home or accessory rural occupation approval, there will be no further building division requirements. Wellington Fire has approved the magazine storage, and the pole barn magazine has received final approval under County Building Permit 23-UTIL-0250. Larimer County Code Compliance, Larimer County Engineering Department, and the Town of Wellington all had no comments or no objections. The Wellington Fire Protection District did not provide any specific comments related to the appeal, but the applicant has obtained a permit from the fire district, and that is included in your packet. Larimer County Department of Health and Environment provided no objection and directed sort of their comments back to any of the agencies that currently regulate this site. And the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives also did not provide comments, but the applicant has obtained that permit, and that is provided as part of your packet. So the review criteria, which we've already spoken about a little bit today, include the standards from Article 6.7.2.B.5. And so there are 5 main criteria that are evaluated in detail in your packet. But in general, they require that the approval of the appeal will not subvert the purpose of the standard or requirement, that it will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or property values in the neighborhood, that the approval of the appeal is the minimum action necessary, that the approval of the appeal will not result in increased costs to the general public, and that it is consistent with the intent and purpose of the land use code. In this case, staff have found that the criteria for the appeal request have been met. The Development Services team has found that the proposed appeal to allow for the storage of fireworks for commercial purposes in a storage building on a vacant lot will not subvert the purpose of the standard requirement, will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or property values in the neighborhood, is the minimum action necessary, will not result in increased costs to the general public, and will be consistent with the intent and purpose of the code. The Development Services team has found that this request meets all the review criteria for an appeal and is therefore supportive of this request. Staff does have several conditions of approval that they are recommending as part of this application. So this includes the general condition that failure to comply with any conditions of the appeal approval may result in reconsideration of that use and possible revocation. It also notes that this approval applies only to the fireworks storage business at its current level of operation. Any expansion of that use, which would include construction of new structures or significant increases in storage capacity, would need to be reviewed and approved by the county prior to implementation. It also restricts the storage of fireworks to the Type 4 magazine at all times, and no fireworks shall be stored outside of the designated facility, and that they must maintain the permits from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, as well as the Wellington Fire Protection District for the duration of the use on site, and shall provide proof of those permits to the county when requested. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Cassidy. A question, I'm not sure if you have the answer, and that is regarding the permits that have been obtained and that they must be maintained throughout the duration. Do you know, is there annual or periodic renewal of these permits?
I believe they are annual, but I would direct that to the applicant.
Okay.
Anything else, Commissioner?
I believe that's all for now.
I had some questions about how the magazine works. Can you answer those questions, you think? Or, I mean, I just, I obviously read the packet, and it seems like if there were any disruption, it would be contained within the magazine. Is that?
I believe so,
the
and I
case?
can take a stab at it, and
Okay.
I would sort of let the applicant correct any errors I might make. But it's my understanding that essentially the magazine storage, like the Type 4 magazine, is essentially, it looks really similar to like a Connex container or some sort of steel container with those sort of dual action doors. And that's contained within the pole barn itself. I can't speak to the specific specifications of that magazine, but I think the idea is that it would be contained within that structure, and then the pole barn provides additional sort of protection.
And can you remind me if it was previously located outside, and the idea to put it in because it was already allowed outside because of all the permitting it had, but they wanted to move it inside because of aesthetics for the neighborhood? Is that correct?
I believe that was correct, yes.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. You good, Commissioner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would think that moving the storage inside is not just for aesthetics, it's for safety reasons.
That's correct. I believe I was involved in some early discussions with the applicant, and again, I'll let them correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that part of it was to ensure that no one could access the structure as well. So the pole barn did provide additional sort of security.
If I may, just one more, and thank you, Cassidy. And this is probably directed to the applicants, but I seem to recall reading in the packet what is being considered is not just to store the fireworks, but it's also, I believe it's also a staging site. Did I get that wrong for the Wellington 4th of July, for example, the Wellington 4th of July firework display?
I would direct that to the applicant.
I figured you would. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we will now hear from the applicants. I'll ask the applicants to come forward. And you can make your presentation. You would have 10 minutes to do so. you can introduce yourself and then you can get started.
Commissioners. I'm Brian, and this is my wife, Mary Ehrlich, Ehrlich, if you need to spell that. We have been providing a little backstory to the whole situation here. I became licensed with the state of Colorado and with ATF in 2013. And in 2015, the town of Wellington came to me and said, the fire department had decided to quit providing the fireworks show for the town of Wellington, and they had inspected and watched our show for 2 years and said that the town of Wellington should consider talking to us about doing their fireworks show. So we met with the council, they approved our presentation, and we provided the fireworks for the last 10 years to the town of Wellington. We do a unique fireworks show. I'm not going to get too much into that, but if you haven't been to Wellington, you should come. But the main thing is that we have been doing this for the last 10 years, and we have been putting this container outside on our property, within the clearance distances of our home, which still was within 2151 B Lake Road and within Lot 2 of the subdivision. We did have a few comments from time to time from neighbors that when you get rid of that ugly box, when you get rid of the ugly boxes and stuff. And so we did have 2 of them for the last few years because we did need an area to stage at the same time as store. Okay. So we decided after the 23 season that we were interested in building a barn. We had talked to our neighbors, offhandedly a little bit about it, but we decided we'd go forward with building the pole barn so we could move the main storage unit inside the barn. We met with ATF. They approved that we move it inside there. It does add an additional security feature, but we are questions about how the magazine works. It has to have dual three latching points on the door. Those doors have to be locked with a hapless padlock or an inaccessible padlock so that you can't access the pad. So we use the hockey puck lock, which is approved by the ATF, that does not allow, it's a stainless steel lock. We use 2 of those that does not allow anybody to access the hasp of the lock, therefore making it virtually impossible. They'd have to get either a torch or a grinder to cut through that lock. Of course, to access what's inside, they probably won't get to what's inside once the torch cuts through the lock because everything's going to go boom. So the access is virtually impenetrable, really it is. But also then we have added additional security. We put 3-point latches on all the doors to access the building and deadbolts to keep anybody from accessing that building at any time. So you can't get into where the fireworks are being stored. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms requires under Section 27 CFR 555 5400.17 that anything that's considered a low explosive must be stored inside a Type 4 or better magazine. Okay, so that's why we have to have this magazine to store these. The reason we have to store some fireworks is that every year when we shoot a show, there's always a certain percentage that doesn't fire, and those have to be returned immediately back into a magazine. You can't return them to the manufacturer. They may need some repair, but we can do that, fix those, and then we add them back to the show the next year. So they have to be stored all year. We have had a very small magazine on our property since the start, and it sits down lower on we have a little pond on our property, and there's a little small box down there that has a very few fireworks stored in it and have been for years. The large boxes, the container that we have in there, like I said, for 9 years, have been sitting outside. And we've never had any issue from anybody about that to say, you can't do that. And so we've been doing that for years. Where the issue came up is when the barn was built, evidently, that seemed to be a concern. And so I don't know, we thought moving it inside would be, aesthetically pleasing. And then we got a complaint for that. So I will say we didn't understand the land use code. We didn't know, or we didn't have this all in line before we ever built. we'd have told you guys we were doing this. We had no idea. I don't know that everybody that does a little home business or a hobby business in their outbuildings notifies the commission of it. That's considered a commercial business, but we didn't know. And so as far as hazardous materials storage, define hazardous materials. I don't know what all is hazardous. I searched the county websites for a list of hazmat materials. I can't find anything. So I don't know if a can of gasoline or a can of spray paint or a battery or fireworks or whatever is hazardous material. But I do know that our hazmat materials are properly stored in a magazine inside the barn. So that's our petition. We feel that safety is our highest priority. Safety and security of the products, that nobody can get to them. But we do follow every safety procedure. I have been trained by the Pyrotechnics Guild International on an every other year basis. I get my ATF license reissued every 3 years, and they're both in current standing right now. I will be testing in June again for my Colorado State certification to be a display operator. So I am certified by the state of Colorado to be a display operator, and we follow the rules to the limit. We don't do anything outside of that. As far as staging, we do have to take the fireworks out of the magazine and put them on a trailer and take them over to Wellington. We do. That's our staging. So that's how we do that. But other than that, the storage is all contained inside. All the other business aspects are done inside the house. I mean, where I live on the adjacent property. So we do that. Any questions?
Yeah, so you have 3 minutes, you're kind of done, and so we can ask questions now. Is that fine with you?
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't have anything. I mean,
Anything further? Okay.
I mean, we have all our permits, like they said, from the Wellington Fire. They've been out. The captain, the fire chief's been out and saw the magazine, inspected the locking mechanisms. They approved all of that. If there was a deflagration of product inside that box, it would stay inside it. It may look a little more like a balloon, but it will stay inside there.
Thank you for explaining that, because that was one of the kind of questions. That's was my understanding of how the magazine operated, that it would contain any kind of blast within the box.
It has very small ventilation to let the gases out, so it wouldn't rupture. That's part of the design. Let as much gas as it can. There would be impact, of course, from some of the shells moving, but a shell that's not fired out of a mortar, which they're not in mortars in there, has no propulsion. It would go off and it would sit there and then explode. It wouldn't like fly in a direction. If you go online and see magazines where they've gone off, the magazine's intact, but everything inside is just a burned up mess.
Okay, I kind of do want to see that now.
Yeah.
Commissioner, any questions? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Brian and Mary. I have two questions at the moment. One is, well, earlier I asked about the permits that you've secured. Are they renewed annually or are longer duration?
Wellington Fire is an annual process, so they come out every year and inspect. ATF is a 3-year process. They come out every 3 years and inspect.
Thank you. And my second question, think for a moment here, and that is the location of the pole barn that has within it the Type 4 magazine storage unit. How far is that from adjacent homes?
From our home is the closest to it. The code requires that it has to be 70 feet
70 feet.
from the home, but it's approximately 135 feet from our home.
What about
the pole barn is.
What about neighbors?
The closest neighbor would be Scott and Roz Mokler. They're about 580 feet away, maybe a little more.
Okay.
So,
great. Thank you.
Yeah.
The questions,
then-
Commissioner?
I don't think
No?
so.
Did you have
And
something?
one point is that Bee Lake Road is public only for emergency or delivery. It's not a public road. It's not publicly maintained. It's a private road for the most part, and the magazine is about 50 feet from that road. But a public road would be County Road 11, and it's over 500 feet from County Road 11.
Good. I think we're good. So you can take your seat. We'll open to public comment if there is public comment. And
Okay.
then if there is public comment, you'll have a chance to rebut that public comment. You'll have 5 minutes if you hear
Okay.
anything.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So we will now open to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to give public comment? All right, sir, please come forward. And we'll have you introduce yourself.
My name's Curtis Bridges. Although Mr. Ehrlich avoided me, I am his neighbor also. And I have brought that I would like to show the commissioners exactly what the setup looks like, where he is and where I am.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, let me start by saying when I heard Mr. Ehrlich's comments here, he had boxes of these fireworks not sitting out in his lawn, which was obviously not the code for years. He set by himself. And then he made the comment of, I talked to my neighbors. Well, on November 7th, and let me add one other thing before I do that. We, Mr. Ehrlich and I, and one other person, are members of the Westview Estates Homeowners Association. And when I got word of this possible building, I went through the declaration of the covenants, and it clearly indicates to all members that they must obtain written consent from the Architectural Control Committee for any new buildings, and that it needs to have approval for putting a metal barn there prior to any construction. So anyhow, I contacted them, and I have a copy of this here, November 7th, indicating that what the covenants were, what the sections, etc., were, and for it says no metal buildings shall be permitted unless the architectural committee approves them. I got no feedback from Mr. Ehrlich about anything, and I might want to also say this. I spent my career in the law enforcement business. I think I understand it pretty well. And this, you can't break in stuff. If you may remember, within the last couple of years, a guy broke into the Supreme Court building downtown and did $5 million worth of damage, one person. So all you got to do is drive a truck into that, etc., and we got a problem. So let me kind of summarize what I think the issues are.
Okay, and I'll tell you, Mr. Curtis, you're out of time, so we'll give you a sentence to wrap up.
Well, I would say this. Allowing for fireworks storage close to my house, in addition to the fire danger, could have a negative impact on its value and future saleability.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges. So, would anyone else from the audience like to speak? Either for, go ahead, please come up then. I'll have you introduce yourself and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Jeff McCutcheon, MCCUTCHEON. I just want to put on record that We live at 8503 North County Road 11, north of the Ehrlichs. We did not get a letter in, and we would like to support the Ehrlichs with this appeal, my wife and I. And I don't understand why this has all of a sudden become a problem when it hasn't over the last nearly 10 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else who would like to speak on this item, please come up. Please come forward.
I'm Gary Bragdon. Ehrlichs are friends of ours. I have been involved with the management of the in and out of the fireworks and on a volunteer basis. And I'll tell you, it's one thing to have the architectural design approval, the permits, all the applications that are required, but there's also the management of the operation that I think is key. And I have to say that it's top notch. And I guess that as far as the building is concerned that's enclosing the magazine, it's aesthetically pleasing. And it has, I don't understand what the problems are with the building when the magazines have been used in the past too. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Great, thank you. Anyone else in the audience who would like to give public comment? All right, seeing no hands raised, is there anyone online who would like to give public comment?
If there are any members of the public online who would like to speak on this case, please use the raise hand function now. There are no hands raised.
Thank you. So last chance for anyone in person to give public comment? Oh, that's right. Yep. As soon as we close public comment, you will get the chance to rebut. All right. I don't see any hands raised, so I'll close public comment and the applicants come back forward and respond to anything that you heard. And you'll have 5 minutes to do so.
Mr. Bridges brought up the fact that he did contact us on November 7th, and he did, and in an email, and pointed out covenants. He did say in there, since we had not followed the covenants, that he was going to contact his lawyer and pursue the matter legally. So at that point, I felt my only way to communicate would be through his lawyer. When his lawyer contacted me, I would respond because he was going to hire a lawyer. I wasn't going to talk to him, have a conversation outside legal counsel. But then that spurred me to look further into the covenants, and I did search Larimer County records, and because I wasn't aware that we had any covenants. I talked to our other neighbor, Scott and Roz Mokler. They weren't aware of us having any covenants, and that were official. We've never had a covenants meeting. We've never appointed an architectural control committee. We've never appointed a president of the HOA. There's 3 of us in the neighborhood, and so we have had conversations in the past with Mr. Bridges, with Troy and Melanie Hammond, who lived there, with Charlie and Sue Greer, who lived there before. But we have discussed this in the past. The idea of putting up some sort of a building to house the magazine that was sitting outside of that. So, but when I did do my due diligence looking up the covenants, I did find the covenants were filed on July 21st, 1999 by Steve DeLine. And in reading those covenants, on the very first page, Article B, it says, the declarant declares to create a common interest community on lots 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's only 5 lots in Westview Estates. It says on here, Lot 1 is not to be included and is not a part of the common interest community. It is not subject to declaration. On page 3, under section 13, it says the lot shall mean lots 2 through 5 on the designated plot. So our understanding is that Mr. Bridges in owning lot 1 is not a part of the HOA. And so we didn't feel we needed to contact him specifically, although we did a few times in previous years to tell him that we are interested in building a barn. He made comments like, well, you don't have livestock, you don't need a barn. I said, well, we want to have one for storage, and that's what it's for. So that's how we went forward with this. We weren't trying to be adversarial at all, but when we felt that we were going to have to contact a lawyer, we felt that we didn't need to do any more. And we'd already started construction at that point. Our permit was issued in October, and we'd already started construction. We had a frame up, and that was going before Mr. Bridges contacted us. So we just felt that was the case. Now, again, like I said earlier, we did not understand that we couldn't do a storage or a commercial business in there. We didn't understand the use code, and that's our fault. We'd have went through all the steps prior had we had known that. But now we're here and we're going through those steps. And we ask for your approval of this appeal. If we are not able to do that, we will have to cease our business, and we will have to stop doing a fireworks show that literally thousands of people in the town of Wellington look forward to every year, because we just can't move this. And also, in the event if we need to do that, it takes a long time to get another site approved. We have to get ATF involved. They have to come out. They have to monitor the moving of the magazine, the clearance of the magazine, the temporary storage of what's inside there. I mean, it's an ordeal, and it will end the business. And so if that's the will, then that's what we'll do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Anything else?
I guess I would just like to say that in regards to the town of Wellington, they have put out an RFP to try to see just competitively if there's anyone, not because of any of this, but they've done their due diligence in trying to see what the competition would be to do this fireworks show for Wellington, and they've never had even an applicant. So Brian, what he does is really a community service in many ways. He doesn't make a lot of money on this. It's a passion of his, but it would truly affect that town. Either no fireworks at all, or it would cost them a bundle more to try to find anybody else who could come out there. It's kind of their signature for the town. It's something that thousands of men, women, and children look forward to every year, and this is kind of the highlight.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Commissioner, do you have any questions for the applicants while they're up here? I'll just have you stay just for a second in case we do.
Yeah, no, I sort of had a question, but I think Mary Ehrlich answered it, and that was whatever motivated you to get into this line of work. But I guess it's a passion. And
you want to hear the story?
Well, actually, only if you can offer like the really short Cliff Notes version of the story.
The story was when I was a child hoeing beets in Windsor. We had to work the first month after school, and when we got out of school, we finished hoeing beets around the end of June. Grandpa paid us to do that. Mom took us to Cheyenne, and we bought fireworks. That's been my passion.
Okay.
Okay?
I think that's
my favorite holiday by far, and going away.
Anything else, Commissioner?
No, I have a question for staff, but when we get there.
All right. I think we're good. You all can go to your seats.
Thank you.
FYI, you're okay. All right, Commissioner, go ahead and ask your question of staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all. Cassidy, there was reference made to the HOA and the covenants and all of that, but isn't it correct that the county cannot? Maybe you can explain this better, but we really don't have any legal jurisdiction, when it comes to HOA covenants. That's between the homeowners of that particular homeowners association. Is that correct, Cass?
That is correct.
And that is your answer?
Yes.
That's a good answer.
Anything else, Commissioner? Okay. I had a question. I mean, this was a lot so I feel like I understand a lot more about magazines and fireworks than I ever thought I would need to. But one of the questions was around hazardous materials, and it seemed like there was something, and I can't remember in which section I read this, but that it was not considered hazardous if it was within the magazine. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right? Okay. Because it can hold that impact, right? Is that correct? So, okay. I don't think I have any other questions. So, Commissioner, I'll turn it over to you for deliberation.
Thank you. So, always very appreciative of public comment, people showing up to engage and provide input. Certainly appreciate the applicants helping us to better understand the details of fireworks storage. I, 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 according to once again, we have to go back to these 5 review criteria when it comes to an appeal that would require us to deviate from the standards. And it's my opinion that, as is described in our staff report, that the criteria have been met, and therefore it would be appropriate to approve this appeal, which is my position. I think for me the biggest thing is addressing the safety issue, and given that the applicants have gone through the pyrotechnic training, given that the various permitting and licensing has been achieved, the BATF and the Wellington Fire Protection District, and that pertains to criterion B. Approval of the appeal will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or I know there was a comment about property values, um, uh, and I don't think we have conclusive evidence about the impact of this, what is being proposed, and the impact on property values, although I appreciate Mr. Curtis's comments immensely. So I, um, I will support the Ehrlich appeal.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I also support the appeal. And I appreciate Mr. Bridges coming forward because I think on first reading, it's like, oh my gosh, there are fireworks being stored in this area. But I think that, in reading through the materials and really understanding how the magazine works, how it's very protected, and then really understanding, the subject properties in the open district, that the use aligns with rural and the low impact nature of the area. So I don't think that it's certainly safe. It's definitely, you know, with all the permitting that's been done by both the fire department and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, it seems like it does meet all these safety standards. Furthermore, it's in this magazine that's highly protected and can withstand any impacts that would happen if things were to explode within it. I mean, it is a very safe operation. In many ways, probably safer than other things that people store in a garage or a barn area. So, I think at first glance, it seems like it might not be something that's safe, but in further reading, it seems like it is safe. And furthermore, it seems like this is an appropriate area of the county to have this kind of operation. So I will be supporting. I think that it does meet the criteria of the land use code, and so I will be voting in support of this appeal. Thank you for everyone who came forward. I appreciate your comments today, and I will ask Commissioner Kafalis to make a motion on this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the Ehrlich appeal, file number GNRL 0561, subject to the conditions as recommended by staff.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion? Go ahead,
Yeah.
please.
Just some additional comments. One is that I appreciate further clarification on the staging aspect of this. For some reason, I thought somehow you were firing the stuff from nearby, but obviously you bring it to a location closer to town for the 4th of July fireworks. So I appreciate that clarification. And then, secondly, going back to one of the particular criterion, which is C, approval of the appeal is the minimum action necessary. I think that criterion is met because I think another course of action would have involved a special review or administrative special review, perhaps a rezoning, and I suspect that would be a lot more cumbersome. So I think we're meeting that one as well. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner. So there is a motion on the table. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 2-0. And that is all the business we have to come before the board today. So with that, at 4:20, we are adjourned. Thank you.